Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I'm sorry it's been so long since the last one. I've at least had time to set up a little background here behind me and a keyboard overlay in Open Orienteering Mapper, which is going to show you the buttons that I'm pressing, which should make it easier to follow along with some of the shortcuts I'm using. The only thing I've noticed is if I press a button very quickly, it sometimes doesn't show up. So I'll do my best to hold onto the buttons so that they appear and you can follow along. So today's video is going to be about what I call the angle problem in satellite images. So I'm going to explain what I'm talking about and offer some tips to help you deal with this in your own mapping. So that's going to be easier to do with a demo. So let's dive into Open Orienteering Mapper. Okay, so we've got our map open here in Open Orienteering Mapper, and we've just got a georeferenced satellite image here to work with. Now, one might imagine that a satellite looks straight down on its target. And if that was the case, on something like a building, we'd only be able to see the roof. We'd be looking straight down on it and we'd see the roof. But what we actually find are instances like this one here where we can see that the image has been taken at a bit of an angle. And the effect that that has is for tall objects like buildings, we can often see one or more sides of the building, and then on the opposing side, we can't see it. On the opposing side, the roof kind of hangs over the ground. So as I said, you can see along this line here, we can see the side of the building. And on the other side of the street, the roof is kind of hanging over the actual edge of the building and it's blocking a lot of the path and maybe half of the road here. So I'm going to be kind of talking specifically about buildings in this demo, but this goes for any tall object. The taller the object, the kind of more severe the lean that you're going to notice. So in this demo, I kind of want to go through just some tips and some techniques that I use when I'm dealing with this issue in my satellite images. So the first tip I would have is kind of just trust the ground. In a georeferenced satellite image, I trust the ground. So in my sprint maps, I tend to use the satellite image as the kind of core template in the base map. So I'll just draw straight on top of the satellite image. That might not be absolutely perfect. Sometimes you do notice a slight few meters error between, a georeferenced satellite image and say the same LiDAR data. But given we get a wealth of information from satellite images in urban areas, I think it's kind of a fair thing to do. So if we're using the satellite image as our kind of core template, where we can see detail, we're kind of just drawing on top of it. Like here, the side of the road, we can see it. Or down here in the park, you might want to draw this like this, for example. So we kind of have this trust in the bits of the satellite image where we can see the ground. We're drawing on top of the ground. So that's kind of the first tip here is trust the ground. So here really we want to focus on the side of the building facing the satellite. So that'll be kind of where you can see the side of a building. So we can see the side of the building here on the top and over here to the right. And because we can see the side of the building, often we can actually see where the building meets the ground. And given we're trusting the ground, we're kind of happy to trust that reference. So I can draw this building outline here. And also on this other side, I can see kind of the side of the building, where the building meets the roof here and where the building meets the ground. Well, we're trusting the ground. So, I do well to pick up my direction here from the side of the road that I can see well and just draw along where I can see the building meeting the ground there. Now on the other side of the building, this bottom side, the south side, we can't see where the building meets the ground because the roof is leaning over the actual base of the building. So the second tip is sometimes we can infer detail. We can infer detail even though it might be obscured by these leaning buildings. So we have an example here on the north side of this road. We can see all of these buildings are kind of leaning over the pavement and even part of the road. But because we have this kind of straight road here, we can infer where the pavement edges are that are covered by these buildings. So I'm going to take my step symbol and I can just draw a line all the way across. And you can see here, it's lining up nicely with the bits of the pavement we can actually see that kind of appear from behind the building here as well. So even though we can't see the pavement edge right here because this building is covering it, because we're dealing with a kind of straight road here, we can just cut straight through all of these leaning buildings. Obviously then we would have to come in and tidy up later on. Something like this. But we're getting this line here, even though we can't see it explicitly on our satellite image. Over here, another example, even though this building is leaning out over the pavement and over the road, we have this straight line here. And that'll actually even give us the edge of the building. For example, to draw it something like this, we know that this left edge of the building here is on this line because the building ends where the pavement starts, and we can see the pavement disappear behind the building and reappear again afterwards. And now moving on to kind of the third tip, one of the trickiest things is kind of just figuring out where is the base of the building here. So we can't see the base of the building on this south side because the roof is hanging over it. And keep in mind all of these tips, you need to use common sense and just keep in mind the big picture and if what you're drawing actually makes sense. But one thing we could do here is on the north side, we can see where the building meets the ground. So we've drawn that. That's tip one. We trust that. And we can also see kind of where the roof starts. So we have a bit of like a measure of the slant here or the angle. Now, if we know that the building has a uniform height, or at least the height of the roof on this north side is the same as the height of the roof on the south side, and the building isn't covering a huge area, so we know the kind of angle on each side is the same, then we can estimate this south side of the building by kind of drawing our offset here. So we're measuring the offset from the base to the roof and then just bringing that across to the other side. So if I was to actually draw the edge of the roof here, then this offset, which I'll take from the middle, will bring us back to the base. The same measurement that we took from the other side. And if I draw that out, it would be something like this. So we have I'd say a pretty good estimate here of where the base is on the south side of the building, where the extent of the building actually ends, even though it's covered and blocked by the roof of the building hanging over it. And obviously, as I said, use common sense. And, when you're out in the field, you'd want to check this, ensure that this offset we've applied actually looks good. But it's a pretty solid estimate and it can, allow you to get more out of your satellite image. And now one final tip, again to do with roofs hanging over the base of the building. If we wanted to kind of get an idea of where the base of this building is, even though the roof is obscuring it in the satellite image, one thing we can do is use bits of the satellite image we can actually see that line up with what's obscured by the roof. So here we can kind of see, the edge of the road here. And more interestingly for us, the inner edge of the road here, which is probably a wall of some sort. So if I draw this, now I'm kind of happy that the building edge here lines up with this wall. So this wall is kind of telling me where the edge of the building is, even though it's being blocked in the satellite image. So I can kind of draw it something like this. And then so we'll end up with something like this. So we have that option of kind of inferring where the edge of the building is here. Another option, if we didn't have such a clear reference here out to the left, would be just, so we've been able to draw this pavement edge because we can see where it disappears behind the building, where it appears again on the other side, and it's a straight line. So if we kind of have an idea of the gap between the edge of the pavement here and the edge of the building through either from being out on the terrain or from another source like Street View might give you an idea. You might want to use a helper symbol for this, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just use a boulder. We could kind of, put some object here measuring the gap and, oh, sorry, a building, and kind of just draw the other side. Like this, and then obviously remove whatever we've used to help us measure that gap. So I hope that was helpful, just giving you ideas on how to extract a bit more information out of your satellite image. It can be very useful in urban environments, given it's kind of the core template you might be using in your base map. So that's it for this video. Please give the video a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.